Awesome.
Great. So once again, a warm welcome to our Game Changer series. It's indeed an honor and a privilege to be hosting an eminent panel like you to discuss about the great India opportunity. Of course, like Nupur mentioned, the NRIs and the India opportunity. I'm Avinash, one of the founders of Global Talent Exchange. We're an exclusive platform mobilizing emerging tech talent from skill-rich areas to areas with skill shortages. Technology today is pushing the boundaries of human possibilities and working towards making life better across the world by accelerating social financial inclusion, right? So it's also taken on the critical task of making people and the planet healthier. With India emerging as one of the largest technology hubs and companies in India chasing audacious goals, it brings emerging tech at the forefront. The idea, of course, of this series is to trigger an exchange of viewpoints among experts like yourselves and see how we are placed as a nation to seize this opportunity in each of these emerging, areas. Today, Indian diaspora with its 18 million people, in about 136 countries, is considered the largest diaspora community in the world, bringing in highest amount of remittance. I think it's a close woofing 87 billion. This is the last year's figure. Indian diaspora has also come a long way to play a significant role in keeping India at the center of global affairs. First, it is well poised to contribute towards global supply chain. Self-reliant India envisions India as a contributor to the world, and as a part of COVID crisis has shown the perils of being dependent upon foreign sources of raw material and intermediate products. Second, the outflow of Indian diaspora has positively transformed the perception of the world towards India. The dominance of Indians in software, particularly in the Silicon Valley, has strengthened the image of India as a technology and the source of quality human resources. People like Sundar Pichai, Satya Nadella, Indra Nooyi, Vinod Khosla, Deepak Chopra, and there are many more. We can kind of count on. Third, with a focus on Make in India, Indian diaspora can be facilitated to contribute to the Indian development story by investing in the greenfield, brownfield projects, as well as portfolio investments in India. Similarly, the Indian diaspora is expected to guide the policymakers in the field of AI-driven industry, which will create high-value jobs. Of course, for many who left, the motherland in pursuit of lucrative careers, or world-class education, life abroad, proved to be a wonderful multicultural experience. However, there are several who chose to return united in their nostalgia for the subcontinent that never stopped, being home. Let's hear it from the experts. We have experts from both the sides, people who actually come back and people, who are on the different side of the, globe. So to guide this, drive this, we have Nupur. Nupur Dave, I think she's no stranger. She's an NRI counselor, founder of the NRI study, author, and ex-Googler. She helps NRIs decide whether they should move back to India or not, and has helped 300 plus NRIs in the counseling and millions through her writings and books. Nupur was with Google California for more than 10 years, worked at the Prime Minister's office in India, and is a LinkedIn Spotlight awardee. Over to you, Nupur.
Thanks a lot, Avinash. So just wanted to give a little bit of background on why I'm doing this. I love to share my experiences online, and I've been doing that for more than 10 years. And the more I wrote about NRIs, I found that a lot of people were reaching out to me because they really resonated with the type of feelings that I expressed about that very difficult decision, the confusion that a lot of NRIs have about should they continue to stay abroad or should they move to India. And that rose gave rise to the NRI study, where I not only counsel NRIs, but I also look for facts and information that can help NRIs make that decision on not only just moving to India, but also leading a better life, a more optimal life. And I've been doing this for more than 6 years now. So I am so happy to be here talking about a topic that is so close to me, which is NRIs and what mountains they have to climb to make the move happen. So I'd like to start off, Avinash, if you're okay with that. I'd love the participants to introduce themselves, and I wanted to start with Arjun. Arjun, can you tell the audience a little bit about yourself in the context of NRIs and India? Arjun, you're on mute.
Yeah, I'm technically an NRI, but I'm technically also not an NRI. So I graduated from IIT Kharagpur Electronics in 1970, stayed back in India, quite unlike a lot of my batchmates, worked with DCM for 5 years, then 23 years, I started one of the 6 co-founders of HCL. I worked with them for 23 years. When I actually came to the US in 89 to start what you now know as HCL Technologies. Never really left India. I still have a home there. I have a home here. My son lives there. My daughter lives here. So I go up and down 5 or 6 times a year, other than these pandemic years when travel has been restricted. I sort of left HCL in 98. I was turning 50. I thought I'd done enough. I'd retire. I hadn't planned it. Big mistake. I ended up starting another company. Sold that in 2011, Headstrong, if you've ever heard of it, in financial services. And I've been working with startups since then, basically in healthcare and education, and trying to leverage technology to make a difference to the economically underprivileged in India. Yes, a lot of work with AI companies and stuff like that, but mainly technology. And that's really all I know.
That's so exciting, Arjun. People would love to lead that dream life of being in the US and in India, and you have designed your life to make that happen. So thank you for the encouragement and the inspiration that you're bringing to us. I wanted to move the mic to Nikunj. Can you give us an intro about about where you fit in the NRI in India scene?
Sure. So I fit because I grew up in India and I have been in the US for 16 years, as simple as that. And have been thinking, I have talked to Avinash also in the past. I've been thinking about moving back as well. Background, I spent most of my life with Tech Mahindra. My last role was that of Chief Technology Officer, and I used to run a digital transformation practice for Americas. Additionally, I have been very engaged with the university over here. I have been a part-time professor at the University of Texas at Dallas, which is my alma mater. Been working with Linux Foundation for Artificial Intelligence. I was on the technical steering committee and currently on the Forbes Technology Council as well. Right now I'm working with Amazon, joined Amazon about 15 months back, and I'm leading new country launches for retail business for Amazon. What that simply means is creating something, Amazon.something. So my team launched Amazon Poland and Egypt last year, and right now in the process of launching new countries for the retail business.
Very interesting. Thanks for that, Nikunj. I wanted to talk to Arun Jain. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. First of all, thank you for the opportunity to join this panel. Arjun is a role model for a lot of us from IIT. And I recently moved here 4 years back because of setting up a team for my company. I work for an investment bank, so I'm a technology leader at investment bank. Spent most of my professional career with different banks on the street. But I also spend a lot of time advising and advising the startups, mostly Indian startups, and I'm personally an angel investor in a lot of these. Given I believe we all have soft corners for startups, being an IITN, right? So we spend a lot of time with them. But I did my graduation from IIT Guwahati. I spent a lot of time working for different enterprises in India. Um, uh, Sitting here in US in last 4 years, I have chaired a conference for Pan IIT India. So it's like even if I have left India, it's all over in my brain and heart. I could never leave it. So that's why I'm completely focused on working with IITs, being a vice president of Pan IIT USA. We try to brand IITs across the US, across the globe, coordinating with other Pan IITs in other countries. So it's all about creating that brand of our alma mater, but more of India. I believe we all are ambassadors of the brand and the country that we belong to. So I just believe in that and continue to work towards it.
Well, very nice point there that we're ambassadors for our country wherever we go. Wanted to talk to Aditya about his introduction.
Thank you. And good morning, good evening, wherever folks are. Arjun, you have definitely paved the road for many of us. And now looking at all of the folks on this panel, I feel very much underqualified to be here because when Yadu's folks reached out, I said, look, as much as I would wish to, I am still very much stuck in the US. Like we've planted roots now. You know, we have a 17-year-old, and he's definitely not moving back to India. Right? It's just almost impossible. I will say that I've been very fortunate because I've had a chance in the US to be part of some very interesting technical plays. I am a technologist at heart, but I've sort of moved a little away from technology into the human aspect of enterprises and organizations, and especially startups. So I've been, like I said, I've been very fortunate. I was part of LinkedIn when LinkedIn was really, really small. I joined LinkedIn when we were 40 people. Yadu and I met each other when I had come back to India to get the India operations on the technical front set up. And it's very interesting for me because I come to India really, really often because family is here. My Sadhguru is here in India. And the spiritual aspect of my life is very critical to me. So I take every single opportunity to come back to India to spend some time with him. I'm at the ashram right now. So what I have realized over all these years, and I'm getting to that point where 50% of my life will now be spent in the US vis-a-vis when it used to be like, oh, I was born and raised in India. Now I'm getting to that point where I'm like 50% India, 50% US. So it's getting to that funny point. But what I have realized in India is that what I used to think of as our limitations are now becoming our strength. We used to always count on, infrastructure is not good. Oh, internet speeds are not good. I'm sitting at the ashram and I'm getting very reliable internet, right? Nice. and I use this little thing, and thanks to Uncle Ambani, as I call him now, I get internet everywhere I go, right? I was in Morbi, middle of nowhere. I had 7 megs down and a meg up. I can do all these things now from wherever I'm in India versus, I can't go to my village because I may not get internet, right? Or because I may not get FUBAR or whatever it is. It's funny, my brother and sister-in-law pay for flowers using PhonePe, right? I could never imagine that, right? I could never imagine that. It's so hard to work with currency in India now. Like Nobody wants currency, which used to be so different. Like, I don't remember anybody accepting even checks back in the day, let alone credit cards, right? This is what I feel really, really excited about, is that we are at that cusp where we've sort of skipped a whole bunch of generations in terms of limitations in technology, blah, 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 which the West sort of stumbled through. And we've now got this warp speed ahead kind of a thing, where I think, or rather not, I think, I'm really sure that if we just play our hand right, we've got this big opportunity ahead of us. I'm involved in a bunch of startups in India and in the US. And my focus with both these sectors is basically, how do I get startups in India who are trying to get some sort of cash flow going while they can establish their product market fit, and they have some of the technical abilities to collaborate with startups in the US where they don't have skill, they have ideas, they just don't have the talent, or they don't have the people who can make their ideas come to fruition. I'm a hustler by trade who happens to hack, right? So I'm always looking for interesting opportunities where I can use this 50-50 point in my life to say, how do I help both the sides bridge the gap that they have? With that, back to you.
Great. Thanks a lot, Aditya. And that was really interesting that you're now 50% American and 50% Indian now. Okay, I wanted to talk to Anil from South Africa. Tell me about yourself.
Thank you, Nupur. Good morning, good evening, colleagues. Thank you for having me. I also feel a bit out of place in this panel. Firstly, I'm not an NRI, I'm a PIO. Secondly, I'm not a tech expert. I'm a civil servant, an academic and diplomat. I'm part of third generation Indian, part of the Girmitia community. My foreparents arrived in South Africa in 1893, the very year that Gandhi set foot in South Africa. I was an academic involved in the freedom struggle in South Africa. And when we became a democracy in 1994, I was invited to come and help build our foreign service. And that's how I transited from being an academic at a university in South Africa, where I was teaching Indian history and philosophy. I have my PhD in Indian history. And I've been with the Foreign Service since 1994. And for the major part of my career, I've been responsible for relations with Asia and the Middle East. I've served as South Africa's ambassador to the European Union, Belgium, and Luxembourg. I also served as a diplomat at our embassy in New Delhi. So having been responsible for bilateral relations with India for the past 20 plus years, I visit India quite often. And I've seen the evolution of India over these past 20 years. So I'm very pleased to be part of this panel and give you a perspective from a PIO viewpoint. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, really curious to hear more about that and your journey. Thank you, Anil. Moving on to Urvesh, can you tell us a bit about yourself?
Yeah, sure. First of all, thanks for this forum and opportunity to be here. I don't know on which dimension, but on any of the dimensions, I'm pretty junior to all the very experienced and excellent folks here. I'm basically from tech space as well. Pretty young into the career still, 35. So I think a lot of people have here achieved a lot of great things, and pretty inspiring to see them move and be at a level where they contribute. Not just like technically, but also human wise, country wise. Those are some of the more far-reaching dimensions where you can contribute on. So like Arjun Malhotra talking about contributing on human values using technology. That is my dream. So hopefully someday I see somewhere like that. I can be able to do that. But that being said, I was in Bay Area for almost like 9 years. And just like some of the other folks said here, that you are in USA, but your hearts and your minds are vibrating at Indian level of vibrations. You're reaching out there time and again. So during the COVID, I think it was a time to sort of slow down from the whole rushing forward on the technical growth path, which made me thinking, and I decided to take up an opportunity with PhonePe, which is also in a exciting fintech space right now. I think some of the folks here did talk about how fintech is rapidly evolving, and I think there are some very good opportunities there. Right now, there are some early players in the market. Government push on the fintech is, as I see in PhonePe, I would just like to highlight that the current government's push to organize this whole money. I think they have a very comprehensive vision, and they really don't want to leave any stone unturned in that, turn in India into a very well observed, regulated, money space from a government's bird's eye view. So though we may see end consumer products, but behind the scenes, they have frameworks which are really guiding the evolution of finance as a technology in the country. The neo banking, they have all this account aggregator license, which is going to make data for insurance companies and any other companies which want to make financial decisions very easy. And obviously, transferring money from one person to another is one of the very low hanging fruits in the equation. So I'm getting to see that, very exciting to see, a cross vertical push to, become a more organized country and, add value to humans. So that's a great thing. I think even in AI and blockchain, even in quantum computing, the government is coming out with very concrete support, not just with policies, but with funds and teams. So I think, 5-10 years down the road, we won't be the India which was 5-10 years what we saw before. Very rapid changes coming along. I have a few friends in TFR who are, appreciating the government's push to support stipends for advanced researchers and, support for use of blockchain AI in, in all the genetics and everything. So there are going to be very deep changes which are coming, and hope that the momentum keeps going. So that would be fun. And anyone, wishing to technically lead or start things, and I think there are a lot of folks here already doing it. I saw someone who's also already an angel investor as well. And there are folks who are in the almost nearing the retirement, but contributing to startups. So yeah, I think exciting place to be, good forum to be here for a early morning.
Great. Thanks for that, Urvish. So it seems like I work for your competitor.
Okay.
So it's called FI. We're a neobank.
Neobank, yes. Neobank.
Yes. So you will hear more about us in a couple of years.
Sure.
Anyway, moving on to
You all
Siddharth.
make me feel out of place when I'm in India. I was in India in December, and the same thing. I used to pull out a credit card or cash, and everybody was looking at me like, "What is he doing?"
Yeah. Oh, I have interesting. All my NRI friends who come and visit, when they're paying for the bill, they try and swipe all their cards and none of it works. I don't know why. And then they end up paying cash, and I'm sitting there laughing with my phone and saying, I could have just scanned my QR code in a second.
So Urvish, I can ask for a help. If you can have the NRI accounts be eligible for registering for these services, that would be really nice.
It'll get there. It'll all get there. So on to Sadanand. Can you give us an introduction about yourself, who you are, and what is your relation within the NRI space?
Sure. Yeah. So so when I got the invite, I was like many of the folks here, I was first like, why me? Why are they paying me? I'm still quite young. I've not achieved probably not so much as so many people on the forum here. And so, but then also maybe it also makes sense because I've been talking to basically GTX and my team there, on my move towards India. So maybe it made sense from that point of view. So so briefly about me. So I was from the tech space. I went to IIT Kanpur for my undergrad then, but my heart and soul is in research. So at the core of my heart, I'm a scientist. And so, you will hear a slightly different perspective about tech from me than a lot of folks here. So basically right after graduating from IIT Kanpur, I came to US for basically my PhD. So I did my PhD in computational physics, and it involved a lot of kind of very niche application of AI in material science, in discovery of new materials, new drugs, and so on. And so basically then after that, I was in a dilemma of should I keep continuing research in academia. But also, on the other hand, I'm also a kind of person who wants to see my research in real life. So that's why at that point I decided, okay, I'm not going to become a professor. If you ask my advisor, he's still angry at me about that. That's a different story. But yeah, then I ended up moving to basically Intel at that point, and so basically I started leading there. So basically, that was like a first ever team about kind of application of AI directly in manufacturing. So basically, I worked at Intel for a few years. Then I went into, as like anyone else, I got used to a startup world. So since then, so I'm working on a few stuff. Right now, I work in a startup called whiterabbit.ai. Basically, it was founded by a well-known Indian called Rakesh Mathur. He's a very kind of well-known entrepreneur. Like if you know about Jungly.com, what is Amazon India today? So basically, he was the one who founded that, and he sold it to Amazon. So basically, at one point, he approached me, and then basically he's like to lead their science, like with their science team about. So right now, I'm working on basically making AI for breast cancer detection. So more about how can we use mammograms and find breast cancer as early as possible. So right now, we have few FDA approved products. So I have few patents, a lot of publications, and so on. So in doing also in all this rush, I was coming back to the NRI part. I was still kind of I have lived in India, in US now for about last 14 years, including my PhD. And I never, even though I was working, I was technically really, I was enjoying it. It's a really scientifically very challenging world and very satisfying world. But I would never felt in place. I was I always missed my home. I always missed my parents. I always missed everybody back home. And so I would say yeah, I'm right now I'm in the process of moving back to India. I think a few people who were in the beginning of the call, you might have heard from me. So basically, but this process, even though I'm moving it now, this process of thinking about coming back started at least 7-8 years ago. So it has been just coming out. And so basically this whole process I would say amalgamation of things I have worked. So even though I work I've worked day to day with a startup, but I have I'm also a scientific advisor to a lot of startups, some in India, some in US. And then basically one common theme that came to me was in India, yeah, you hear a lot of great startup stories in India. But what I feel still lacked a lot in India, and I think it still lacks in India, is the research side of it. People are you won't see still companies coming with the fundamental research. Yeah, even in terms of, if you talk about AI, compare that to the papers that come out from China, that come out from India, that is lacking. So that's where I wanted to come back and maybe start kind of conversation along that line. So yeah, along that, thanks to basically GTX team, I got connected to Micron. So basically they have started a kind of quite large AI team, especially about AI manufacturing and semiconductor and so on. So I'm going to lead the scientific team, and let's hope for the best that kind of we can bring India also in this map of where China and US specifically are right now. So yeah, so you will see slightly different perspective, maybe a little bit not as positive as others about kind of where India is right now, but I hope that within the next few years, we are able to compete with a lot of other kind of players that are already ahead in this field.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, very inspiring to hear your story, Sadanand, and it'll be very useful for those of our audience that is into research or academia. They'll be fairly inspired by you. I wanted to start my next question with Arjun, and I want to just show you this. I've written this book called Back Home, and in this I talk about why NRIs are so torn about moving to India, and they don't know what that tipping point is. When should you move to India? So the question that I have is, what is the perception of India these days versus 20 years ago for NRIs? And why now? Why do you feel now is a great time for NRIs to consider moving to India? Arjun, any thoughts around that?
Yeah, so, if you look at India in the earlier days, when you say 20 years, you probably mean in the earlier days, you couldn't, how many people could get a loan for a house? How many people, or an apartment? How many people could buy a car? There weren't any leases. interest rates were up at 18%, and from the bank, 27% if you went to the market. It just wasn't you could have, like my parents worked their whole life and didn't own a home, right? And that was really what you looked at that time in India. Whereas when you come to the US, you can get a mortgage. In fact, it's cheaper to pay down your mortgage than to rent a place in California, at least. So, it sort of it was a completely different world in the earlier days. Today, it has completely changed in India, number one. Number two, I think what's happened is exactly what Aditya mentioned, is that when mobile phones came in, we had, I think, one landline to some 12,000 people. I forget the number, but it was a crazy number. And today we have more cell phones than we have people. And so I think we just jumped that. We did, the US was slow because they had to recover their investment in landlines, whereas we didn't have any of those problems. And today, if you look at it, I mean, when I talk to my, the guy, Rediwala, who comes to our door to sell vegetables in Delhi, has a phone pay or Paytm or something on his cart, and that's how he wants his money. He doesn't want his money in cash because someone might steal it from him or whatever. So you are seeing, in fact, India in some ways is far more advanced than the US in terms of some of those things. And you are seeing that we talk about the digital divide. I think in some ways, even our so-called illiterate people are over that divide to some extent, right? It's still there. I don't deny it. But what is missing in India, in fact, the things that you really miss are, you would hate to have a road accident in India. The fact that the ambulance can't get to you in time, the first responders won't be there, right? If you've got the money, healthcare is the same in India as it is in the US. But if you don't have the money, India is not a great place for healthcare. You have a lot of problems if you can't afford it. So I think, and I think from a lady's point of view, when I first came here in 1989, just before the big earthquake in California, actually, within 6 months, my wife told me, "You made me an ABCD." And I said, "You can't be. You weren't born in the US. You were born in India." She said, "No, it's Aya, Bera, cook, driver. That's what you made me." So think of it. When you talk about quality of life, you can't, there's no comparison. So I think given a choice, look, my daughter's here, but the only reason she's here is that my grandson is borderline autistic, and she thinks that you have better, he'll have a better upbringing here and better support here than he would have in India. Otherwise, you ask her today, in a heartbeat, she'll be back in India. In fact, every holiday we end up spending in India because 2 months in the summer, 1 month in the winter, that's her time. My son gave up his US passport to become an Indian citizen. He is back in India. So, yeah. So, it is, I mean, your quality of life in India is very different. Yes, pollution, there are problems, and everywhere there are problems. In fact, one of the big problems you have in the US today is this whole supremacy thing that's coming up. All these people who seem to think they are superior just because they have a different color. I mean, in California, we are somewhat buffered against it. Yes. But in the rest of when we did Headstrong, I moved to Virginia for a few years because our headquarters were there in Fairfax, Virginia. And I actually, in California, I've never felt like an outsider. In Virginia, I was a foreigner. And it changed over time. I was there for 7 years. By the time I left Virginia in 2011, it had changed. People started accepting. You felt you were more acceptable or accepted in that environment. But going from California, it was a big shock. And I guess when you go to the Midwest and you go to places that are, in Tennessee or Kentucky and Alabama or whatever, it's going to be a bigger shock. And I haven't been there. I mean,
I lived in Alabama, so I can attest to that.
And it's strange. Everyone assumes that people in the US are educated.
Hmm.
That's not true. Most people, a lot of people, not most, a lot of people have not been more than 50 miles away from their home.
Hmm.
Right. It just is, in some ways, it's a strange place. They know a lot of local news, but they have no idea of world news. They have no idea, like, we used to have general knowledge exams and stuff when I was in school. I don't think they do that here. Their knowledge of the world is really, really limited. For a lot of people, again, California is a kind of an exception of parts of at least Northern California where I live in the
Hmm.
Bay Area. But yeah, it's so, I that's the way it is. I never left India, actually, in a
Okay.
way. I've been here for now 20 plus years, 30 years,
Hmm.
so to say, but I've never closed my home in India. I was always going back after 2 years, I'm going back after 1 year, that kind of stuff. So that's been my life.
Physically in the US, mentally in India. Is that how we could call it?
As long as my parents were there, yes, we wanted to go there.
Hmm.
Now they're gone. It's just, I mean, all my friends are there from school and
Hmm.
college. Not
Hmm.
all, lots of them. And so, as you get older, you find it very difficult to make new friends. If I had come here straight from college, it would have been different. I would have met, people. I came here after working in India for 20 years.
Hmm.
It is completely different.
It is, yes. Thanks for that, Anjur. Very endearing story, and especially about your son who gave up his American passport. I'm sure people would be finding a hard time to believe that that someone can actually convert their American passport to India, because it's usually the other way around. So I wanted to take this question to Arun about what you feel your perception is, and you worked with the, just like Arjun, you worked with the IIT community. What is the perception of India these days, and why now?
See, just building on to what Arjun mentioned, right? The whole paradigm in India has changed, and I believe people like Arjun and lot others who returned between now and past 20 years back to India really helped to expedite the growth that we have seen in India in these years, right? And they kind of have created that vision how India should be, so that instead of people moving out of India to other countries, they should really look forward to stay there, and more people would like to come back. Um, in terms of overall facility infrastructure, just like availability of internet, right, has that was the very that's now a basic need for everyone. Talk of healthcare, talk of education, talk of work, anything, right? And as Aditya mentioned, right, Uncle Ambani has made it possible for everyone in that 1.4 billion population of India. So that itself is a game changer. I believe the opportunities that exist as of now in India, to an extent, is at par with what exists otherwise, right?
Mm,
In my entrepreneurial life, when I compare the startups that comes from India for all the advice and mentorship and funding, they are doing a lot more cool technology stuff than some of the startups here, right? So I believe they have much more potential at this stage to become next unicorn than what we see in US. And uh, uh, time will only tell how that evolves. But there's no lack of talent. There's no lack of facility, and I believe there's no lack of opportunities. Even people who are trying to find job. I was just looking at a couple of hirings in India, and I believe the the uh, packages that we pay now are at par with what we used to get when I was looking for a job after IIT, right? So everything in those dimensions has changed. There are still a lot more to build on that. The way I see now where India stand, right? I believe India needs to change towards being a knowledge owner rather than a knowledge user, right? India needs to generate, like Sadanand mentioned, right? India needs to generate that knowledge. India needs to have a lot more patents filed and accepted than the rest of the world, because I believe India is the only country that has kind of made that possible all over across also, right? If you think about patents being filed in US, right? You'll see that a lot of these are from people from Indian origin, right? They have come here for education. They have done their MS, PhDs, and then eventually started working in scientific research area or industrial or other enterprises and started filing these patents, right? These things can be done with the all the technology work that's going on in India at this stage, right? So that's just one an example. But overall, I believe even the government, from the government perspective, I would say that government can have focus on some of the challenges that world is facing and can be the leader in solving those challenges and prove to the world that India is not that same economy where that these developed nations used to outsource their work, but India can now lead the world in solving some of the greatest challenges that our generation is facing as of today. So that's where we stand, and I'm sure with that stage set, India is really onto that journey of becoming that phase where world can look upon, and India can help them.
Absolutely eye-opening point out there about being an owner rather than just a consumer of technology, and that point about filing patents. And I'm sure Sadanand has a lot to say on that. Where I remember in Google, we used to file patents left, right, and center on anything that we did. And that culture, if it comes to India, we'll see a lot of movement out there where people can be more encouraged to understand the uniqueness of what they're doing. So I wanted to talk to our seasoned diplomat, Anil, about his idea on what is the perception of India these days and why is now a good time for NRIs to work and move to India.
Thank you, Nupur. As I said, I'm not an NRI, I'm a PIO. So I'll give you a perspective. We have a community of about 1.5 million people of Indian origin in South Africa. And about 200,000 NRIs that are recent entrants to South Africa. We are a young democracy, just about 28 years old. So most of the NRIs arrived here post our democracy, whereas people like myself, the indentured system started here in 1860 and went on till 1911 when it was stopped. So the majority of people of Indian origin are from that background. You have also within that context two categories of people of Indian origin, those that came as indentured Indians, like my foreparents, and those that came with Gandhi and thereafter as what we call passenger Indians to do business in South Africa, the business community, mainly from Gujarat state. So you had the evolution of two parallel communities, and you see, of course, those that emanated from the Gilmetia community are today also in all sectors of South African society, in business, in politics, in all spheres of society. Whereas the NRI community are by and large involved in business in South Africa. So from the perspective of PIOs, a lot of people of Indian origin have an emotional bond to India. The passenger Indians still have family and even property in India, and they return on a regular basis. whereas people with my background, we have lost contact with our ancestry. But what is happening in South Africa, especially after the OCI system was introduced by the Indian government, many South Africans now are applying for OCI cards, trying to trace their ancestry. And many are going back to India, buying property, and many see India as a land of opportunity as well, given the evolution of India as a major global economy and the direction India is moving in. They see it as an opportunity to either do business or to go back and even live in India. You're seeing an increasing number of young South Africans, especially those that are from a wealthy background, investing and wanting to do business. But I think the Indian government needs to do more. Apart, of course, you have your embassy, your consulates here. As I've indicated, I've been responsible for relations with Asia, so I've traveled over the past 3 decades extensively in India and China. And when I look at how China has harnessed opportunities through the diaspora community, I think India can take a lesson from that. I have many friends in the Chinese community, like I do in the Indian community. And I say to my fellow Indian diplomats from MEA that you are not leveraging the opportunities that are there from Indian-based communities, be it NRIs or PIOs, not just in South Africa. I mean, in Southern Africa and Eastern Africa, you have 3 million people of Indian origin. Of course, about 15 years ago, the Indian government put together the India-Africa Summit, and you've had about 3 of these summits, and one is due later this year. It's good. You have this architecture, including the strong bilateral relations where India sees Africa as an opportunity now. And Africa is an opportunity, I believe, for India as being the last frontier of development. But I believe the focus in terms of looking at how you can leverage opportunities through the Indian diaspora has not been explored sufficiently enough. And it's an opportunity lost, because I believe if that is harnessed properly, you would find a greater interest from these communities in linking you with the wider networks of the countries where they are citizens, including in South Africa. And as I've indicated, I think you need more focus from the MEA and also the business community. I believe you need better networking, be it in the technology space or any aspect of business. This is worth exploring going forward. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Anil. Wanted to just quickly gather Aditya's thoughts on this topic on why now. And Aditya, if you can give us a not technology background to why now, because a lot of other people have given their point of view on technology, and I know you're into theater and a lot of cultural other aspects. So if you could talk a little bit about why now and what perception has changed from the not technology standpoint.
Thank you. From the not technology point of view, I think the thing that I have noticed change is we have a generation now in India that has grown up with the means that have made the world borderless, right? What has happened is, I remember distinctly when I first got my hands on a computer, which was literally when I was in university. And that was also very much a precious resource that was difficult to get to. That doesn't exist anymore, right? A generation, just like the generation in the US, where they don't consider the social no-nos as they are known, same-sex marriage, equality between genders, There is a generation in the US now that just says, why is this even a point of debate, right? Similarly, the generation now in India is at a point where they're like, why are we even having this debate, right? It just exists. The infrastructure, at least in some sense, just exists. They're just used to that. I will also sort of say that there is still this challenge, though, from somebody like me, right? While I come to India at least once a year, I'm still in my bubble in some sense, right? I do my family thing, I do my social thing, but I'm still in a bubble. There needs to be a little more proactive to sort of build a little bit on what Anil mentioned. There needs to be a little more get out of your bubble things for people like me who visit, because there are a lot of sectors of normal life that are still off limit for me. I don't have an Aadhaar card, so I can't do a whole bunch of things. There are still these restrictions in some sense that prevent me from doing simple things like I can't have a SIM card that I can say will continue to have the same phone number irrespective of me not keeping it active in India and things like that. The why now is a question that I've been debating for a long time personally, right? Because like I said, my son's 17, he's going to go off to university, and then we're going to be empty nesters. We have one son. My wife and I have to figure out, what do we do? Like, do we stay back in the US? Do we split our time here in India or back in? And the more I think about it, the challenge is the India that I left is an India that is difficult for my wife and I to come back to, right? There was a lot of hardship in some sense, right? Whereas it isn't the case today. And somehow this has not been presented, or this has not been made available either through social media, either through, I'm going to use the word propaganda in some ways because somebody mentioned China. So there hasn't been this push for India to say, hey, all of these things that you thought of were the biggest challenges 20 years ago don't exist. And it could be literally a 10-point bullet list, like which gets put up at airports or somewhere, which says, hey, it's so easy to go right? And becomes easier. A lot of these things have changed. And I have to make special efforts to figure out that they have changed. Whereas it would be nice if there was some way to say, this has changed, right? Nupur, you asked me to be non-technical, but unfortunately, being a technologist, I tend to be drawn towards the technology side. But I can tell you, right, the ease of doing commerce, the ease of doing a lot of the things that were challenging when I left India, just they're so subtle that until you sort of sit back and reflect on them, you're like, like my dad had to have blood tests done, and somebody just showed up, drew blood, took it to some lab. 2 hours later, he had results. Never imagined this in India, in the US, sorry. Never imagined this, right? Healthcare, while I agree with Arjun, healthcare for if you don't have the means can be challenging, but the ability to have healthcare be distributed like it does happen in India is unimaginable in the US, right? I remember even for COVID and for everything else, we would have my nieces had their shots their shots done at home. These wonderful ladies came with ice packs and all of the shots. At home, they got their Tikakaran done. There was a nice sticker put on the door saying that this house is done. This is unimaginable in the US, right? Anything that involves humans, right, and human labor, which is the biggest challenge for everyone in the West, is this huge resource that India, if we leverage it right, can just, that's why I find it to be really, really exciting, because some of these things are just unimaginable. Like I don't know if any one of you, I'm not trying to do a spiel, but there is this app, I forget what it's called. My brother ordered groceries. 7 minutes later, the groceries had arrived at his door, right? He didn't leave the house. We were all COVID positive. We were all quarantined. We ordered oatmeal. 7 minutes later, we had masala oats in the house, right? This is unimaginable in the West, right? Unimaginable in the West. So the infrastructure has caught up. There is a generation of folks who've just taken these things for granted. and who've grown up with these things being available. That's why I think now is the time. Now is the time.
Thanks a lot for that. I want to modify this question a little bit for some of our panelists, where we're talking about what kind of emerging technologies that are coming up in India, which will help India grow in the next decade. I'm talking about something that's disruptive. So I wanted to start that question with Sadanand, and I know Sadanand, you've been in academia and research, and I just wanted to have you lead this question about what are those emerging technologies that will help India grow in the next decade? What is your viewpoint on that?
Yeah, so yeah, thanks for that question. And yeah, probably I think like my views, of course, will be biased on my little experiences, right? But of course, I think other people can kind of chime on and they can add on to kind of my experiences. But I think like these days you hear the word AI everywhere. Like people just talk about AI. But also I think this word is extremely misused. There's nothing called AI in the world right now. There's no artificial intelligence. Like everybody is just lying to you in the
Interesting. Tell us more.
right? Everybody is lying to you in the face. There's no artificial intelligence. Like a few months back, like me and some friends at Berkeley, like we published this paper called literally "There's no AI." Like so, yes, the idea being that when people talk, so then when I talk to people in the industry, right? So you see, basically that's the thing. The people should talk about that word not in the marketing gimmick sense, but at a more scientific sense, more usability sense. To me, the word AI is still there, but I will not call it artificial intelligence. Rather, I would call it augmented intelligence. Right? So people, you have a lot of learnings from data, like what Google is doing these days, what Facebook has been doing, but a lot of startups that are doing, like especially in say medical space. So you have all these learnings from data. Then you use that learning to change, like say how the healthcare is provided to people, how we make it faster, how we make it more sustainable, how do we make it more kind of affordable to people. So I think that's where I think like a lot of us talked about it. Like for example, healthcare in India. Right? I think yeah, like Arjun said, I think it's something that it is available to you only if you have the means. They're more than half the population. They really do not have access to. Think like we have technologies at our doorstep that can enable like healthcare to even those people. So thinking like I think now is the time to take that lead, take that step in the right direction. Like, and especially that is possible if say right scientific people, right business people, right investing comes into that space. So I think that's a really strong like I'm a strong believer in basically modifying the medical space. I think there are a lot of big companies coming in India, but also I think it's also very limited. So if I look at like AI companies in health space in India, a lot of them are about delivery. Everybody's talking about how can I deliver pharmacy to you at a doorstep. To me, pharmacy is the last step. Like you get prescribed something, before that a lot of things need to happen. So thing is like, why are we not focusing on things before that? So then next comes into the medical, like the access to doctors. And like I've talked to many people in like really high doctor, like high like people who are at so like I know people who had Medanta in Lucknow, people who had so I know people like who had departments at basically Apollo. So if you talk to them and then you talk to a lot of people at the local level. Problem is in India, like whether you like it or not, the level of medicine that is offered is sort of there's a huge standard deviation. You have people who are really knowledgeable, and then you have a large spread of people who really cannot diagnose disease. I would be very blunt, they cannot diagnose disease. But thing is, how can you, but still you have this human capital, you have this human power, like they are still better than a layman. They have got the medicine, like the degree of medicine. So thing is like, how can we use all this technology in conjunction with whatever the medical knowledge we have available in the country? And so basically things like, how can we kind of increase, how can we enhance their, basically enhance the availability of kind of more knowledgeable doctors to everyone. So maybe like, so I talked about augmented intelligence, right? So how can you augment intelligence from one pool of doctors to people who are just like doctors who are still learning? Like, so basically not going to technical details, things like basically we need to invest in technologies that enable all these things, enable kind of larger availability of healthcare in general. So I think to me, like that's the one part. Then I also kind of have experience like in other part is about, so we talk about Make in India a lot, right? So when we talk about Make in India, so let's like, yeah, it's a very nice word, but thing is like, let's dive deeper into why that is not happening. With my limited kind of experience, I know there are a lot of people, very experienced people here who work more closely to kind of manufacturing industry in India. But in my limited experience, what I feel is the main kind of issues that are leading to like not having kind of enough kind of thrust into this particular scheme of Make in India is about things like, yeah, of course, there's technological issues. Like, for example, we still cannot make aeroplanes, as simple as that. We cannot make semiconductor chips in India. Like we have a lot of companies who, for example, take Micron, Intel, like all these companies, like they do all the nowadays they're doing a lot of research. The chip designs happen in India. A lot of manufacturing kind of aiding technology development happens in India, but not the manufacturing. So once you do all the thing there, then it goes back to US or China, and it happens. The question is why? Like what is lacking in there? So of course, like a lot of things are tied into it. Like yeah, of course, there need to be. It's not just that a company cannot just invest because they have means to do it, because a lot of infrastructure has to happen around that. Like how do raw materials come? How do the labor? Like how do you handle the labor? How do you handle things like that? But I think even in that space, I think technology has a lot of kind of role to play. So I think we are moving in the right direction. For example, if you look at the, say, basically sector of kind of how the, like things like how things are moving, like basically things like what Amazon is doing and a lot of startups are doing, have started doing. So I think we are moving in the right direction, but probably that needs to happen faster. And probably, again, I think tech has a lot of role to play there. So yeah, so to me, like both kind of healthcare and manufacturing, the Make in India, I think to me, they are like really strong opportunities. But the only thing is like, how can we identify all the kind of missing pieces as soon as possible? And given tech is our strong point, and people in tech, especially the people, they are the strong point. I think a lot of people mentioned here, like how can we leverage those resources? That is going to be the make or break situation in the coming decade.
So love that, the focus you're putting on what you call augmented intelligence. You're talking about healthcare, you're talking about manufacturing as the technologies that will really help us in the future. So Arjun, just wanted to check if you had something to add to this. Do you also feel the same way?
Yes. So, I just wanted to mention something to Sadanand. So if you look at healthcare, I mean, we've got to look at the problems in India and see how we can leverage technology to solve that problem. So the first problem in India is that you've got a shortage of doctors, right? So I have to make sure that when I do my telemedicine, I do it asynchronously. I get all the data before I connect to the doctor. I can't expect the doctor to be sitting behind the screen, number one. Number two, to reduce doctor time, I have to do a diagnosis based on the vitals and the questions I ask, so that I save the doctor 30 to 50 or 80% of his time in giving the diagnosis, right? So there are things, so we use augmented, as you call it, augmented intelligence to actually refine the diagnostics, because doctors may not agree with my diagnostic, right? Which I have experts do. So we use that. So those are the kind of technologies that you'll get into India to disrupt stuff. Now on hardware, the problem in India is in the next 3 years or maybe 4 years, my import bill from hardware, electronic components, is going to exceed my import bill from oil. So we have no choice. India has to get to become a hardware power, has to get into hardware, not just stay on software. And so the government has just announced a 76,000 crore semiconductor kind of support. And they've set up something called the India Semiconductor Mission that is going to be run like Aadhaar was run by Nandan Nilekani, and give it independence of ministries reporting directly to the PMO so that the fab comes up, not just for semiconductors, but for packaging, the whole shebang that goes into that. And really, I mean, I came from a hardware. For me, getting into services and software was actually the reason HCL didn't get into it for a long time is because our belief was that engineers should do R&D and programmers should do programming. And a programmer could be a high school kid, could even be a normal BA, BSc from anywhere. And programming was a skill, not knowledge, skill-based, not knowledge-based. Unfortunately, what happened in the US is we used our engineers to do programming, and obviously they were better than the local programmers, right? And so we built this great reputation on that, and of course it became very lucrative, and everyone switched into it, as did we in HCL, because you can't ignore the trend. But ultimately, we want our engineers to do R&D. We want them to do research. And we did a lot of crazy things in our time in HCL. We had a relational database 2 years before Oracle was formed. We just, at that time, we didn't have a global view. Unfortunately, we had a very local view because India was there were high walls around import and export in India. And so that was the problem. But, there's no reason why today we shouldn't be able to get back our hardware glory. And I'm really talking electronics here. I'm not talking anything else because I don't know very much about other industries. We are exporting cars, our space stuff is world class, if I use that term. But we've got to get back to hardware. And the other reason why we will get back is because today there is a requirement in India for 100 million laptops for education for kids in rural areas. And if we can design a relevant laptop, and I'm just thinking aloud here, but if my laptop could have a replaceable battery because I have power issues in remote areas, if my laptop could be repairable, quite unlike the sealed laptops that you get today, and if we can design a small chip that goes in and allows me to do 3D work with glasses, obviously, on my laptop, and I can convert my CBSE curricula to that 3D thing, I think I'll be able to bridge the loss in this pandemic years of what my people have lost in terms of understanding and knowledge when they go forward. And we are working towards it. And don't be surprised if in the next year or two, you see that stuff come out in India. So in fact, a couple of us who started HCL are moving back and trying to get the hardware business going in India. And so really, hopefully you'll see that coming up.
That is so exciting, Arjun, because we know a lot of NRIs who are in the hardware space and the electronic space don't move to India because they say that they don't have opportunities here. And from what you're saying and what Sadanand is saying, that is completely going to change. So exciting to hear that.
But think of it. Sorry, Nupur, just interrupting you.
Please.
If you set up a semiconductor plant, who's going to run it? We have no one in India who knows how to run a semiconductor. So I have to get people from overseas, and I have to train people desperately very quickly to be able to get in there. So there's a whole industry that will come up just around these new things that are going to be happening when you get into components. So sorry, I didn't want to take all the time.
So we've seen an example from Ola, right? They've started a factory for electric scooters, and their shop floor is just women. It's so inspiring to see the direction in which the Ola is taking their factory with hiring only women on the shop floor. So unique, and hope to see more of that in India. So thank you, Arjun, for that that point of view. Wanted to take this question to Nikunj, because Nikunj, you're in Amazon, and Amazon is really shifting a lot of things here in India. I want to start with an example for you, Nikunj. There's another delivery company that was delaying one of my packages for a couple of days. And my father said something interesting, that 5 years ago or 10 years ago, there were times when you wouldn't get your package for 10 days, where the delivery agent would keep saying, I'm sending it tomorrow. Amazon has come in and really made everybody pull up their socks, because now your package gets delivered on time. You can see its journey, and others have had to step up to that. So just wanted to talk to you, Nikunj, about what you feel is the next emerging technology that companies in India need to be working on or are working on for the next decade.
Sure. I think I also have an example. Few years back, even in Dallas, I'm based out of Dallas, Texas. If I order something, even through Prime, it will take a day or two. Now, most of the things I can get the same day or overnight in the morning. When I was leaving for India in December, I realized I was out of razor blades. So it was 10 o'clock in the night. I placed the order. I had to leave at 9 in the morning. My delivery was there at 6 in the morning. So I didn't have to go out anywhere in the night. So definitely we take a lot of pride in customer obsession and improving and raising the bar for delivery experience. But coming to your question, and I think you are a subject matter expert to a lot. I have read a few articles of yours. We have been connected on LinkedIn. So very good, very impressive. I've enjoyed those.
Thanks.
Plus one to what Sadanand and Arjun mentioned, definitely healthcare hardware, big deal. We should invest in those and continue to grow. I believe the third aspect I would like to just add to this, rather than repeating what is said, is blockchain. Blockchain is, I believe, truly Web 3.0, and companies, countries are struggling to figure out the right way of implementation, right? It's a technology. Every time we think of blockchain, people mostly go to crypto. Crypto is one application, but it is very, very powerful. And while the world is coming up to terms with this, and it's an open area, there is a lot of opportunity to innovate in that space. India has an opportunity with such a large talent pool to take a leadership position in this and drive worldwide applications. While companies in India have not been highly product driven, to Arjun's point, relational database, they already had it, but they missed out the boat. I think Web 3.0 or blockchain offers that opportunity to Indian companies right now and take that leadership position. And second part to this, I think we only think about technology, but technology is just an enabler. What you are doing with it is the key. I strongly believe in that. It's just a means. It could be done in different ways, right? You could order through an app, or you could call and get the groceries delivered. It's just a means to an end at the end of the day for a business objective or an experience creation. To that effect, I think through whatever limited exposures, I try to visit India once or twice a year at least. I've seen that the use of technology for the right purpose. I can give a small example. I wanted to deposit a check into one of my LLC accounts, a side venture. I went to the bank after a long time. They had shut down the account over here because I wasn't using it. I said, hey, I have this check I need to deposit today. I'm leaving. And said, okay, no problem. We have all the documents. I said, I don't have the EIN number or anything with me. So that's fine. You had an account. They pulled up everything from the history, created the account in 10 minutes and deposited the check. Same experience when I look at dealing with the Indian banks. The employees are not empowered. Forget about the customers. The amount of struggle they go through to open an account. Same example, a brand new account to be opened. It took 8 months for me to open an account with a bank in India. 1 month to update a phone number. So if you look at all this, right, it's the attitude to use the technology for the right purposes and to serve the customers in the best possible way and empowering the employees and the customers. I think if that attitude comes in, then technology is there, knowledge is there, but the implementation or the attitude is missing out. from the company standpoint. And I think government is doing a great job, a lot of initiatives on the digital India. So in all aspects of life, wherever the technology touches the human and empowers that experience, I think that attitude has to be brought about. That should be a fundamental change, and that would really transform the way the world looks at India.
Great. Thanks a lot for that, Nikunj. You spoke about blockchain and about, using technology for actually transforming experiences. And while we're on the topic of banking, wanted to get Urvish's point of view on what are the emerging technologies. If you can talk about it from the financial space, I think that'll be super useful.
Sure, Nupur. Yeah, I mean, so from my, some certain amount of experience at PhonePe, the way I look at it is essentially government. It is a lot government driven, obviously, and as you know, some folks, the word is becoming popular, Ambani uncle. So even the co-founders of PhonePe really acknowledge that the geo movement happened, as they call it. So the government push and the support for enabling good speed of data over mobile devices. And as it was rightly pointed out that we skipped a leg, we went from landlines to everyone having mobiles. So these things came along, and on top of these is where the whole money movement now is being being pushed towards. First it was basically to ease and make the movement of money digital. So that was through UPI, which was a big success. And slowly now the government is, now that the foundation of movement of money, the whole tech stack, the product vision of the government, actually, it's not just a product vision of a company, it's a whole product vision of a country as such, which is being driven by the government, is in place. They are now building the verticals on top of it. So you have your, government is exploring, like, why do someone need to go to a store or go to some physical counter to pay their bills, when you can do it online. So the Bharat bill payment, BBPS, came along. It was very well received, at least when we see from a fintech like PhonePe player or Paytm or other such players. A lot of people, and the COVID push really put things on steroid, basically. COVID was an unfortunate history for humanity, but it gave, those who saw the opportunity, jumped on it. So, all the systems were laid out, you can do things at your ease of home. So now people are buying insurance on this, using UPI. People are buying gold using UPI. People are paying their bills using UPI. So now that these business verticals or use cases, as I prefer to call them, are being put on top of this foundation layer. It's generating data, right? And that's where the insights are now going to start pop up, right? So and the government has again been like very proactive. And government is also doing steps like enabling interoperability. So it's trying to break monopolies in players as it's sort of building out this foundational technology. So enforcing 30% limit that no player can have more than 30% share in UPI transactions. Your UPI handles, just like your phone numbers, have to be interoperable. So if I created a UPI handle on PhonePe, I can use it on some other platform easily, right? In fact, they're saying forget UPI handles. Even your phone number can be a UPI handle. So they are continuously evolving even their foundational platform, making sure there are no monopolies and things like that. They are taking UPI international. There are already plans to. So government, our SBI has tied up with the Nepal bank. So now you can, if you're going to Nepal, you can pay using UPI. Behind the scenes, SBI will do the money conversion and everything, Indian rupees to Nepali rupee, Bhutan, I think, and then they'll transfer the money there. Singapore plans to expand UPI to Singapore in next 1 or 2 years. Nice. So UPI is going international, and there's already a plan in place to support NRIs first on this kind of platform. And now that the data is coming up, there are already systemic like license level support, like account aggregator license. I don't know if people have heard about that. Yep. So that allows a company to aggregate financial data, produce insights, and provide it as service to other companies, right? So, micro lending benefits a lot from this. Someone like a micro lender or a neo banking solution can easily ask account aggregator, hey, how does Ovish profile look like when it comes to payments and bill payments, and what is his risk score or credit score, or across, in which different areas is he spending his money? Should I give him a loan on, let's say, buying a TV or not? Right to, you know, giving him a loan to buy a home, or giving him a loan to buy a car, at different levels. So now that this data is getting, so now there's going to be now we are moving to a phase where all this data is going to start getting organized. There might be things like, like in US, there is already a predefined data format for a human healthcare record. I wouldn't be surprised that there would be a unified format for a financial record for a Indian, Aadhaar based human being or something. And so we are making great strides there. I think, and this is, and the interesting part is now it is not just this individual players, right? The banks are getting involved. All the big, AMC kind of companies are getting hooked into this because they are seeing that there is a lot of money movement, lot of data insights. Whom can I target, right? So even AMC, mutual fund companies, they are getting hooked into this. So this platform is getting very pervasive, very huge. And just the sheer amount of visibility that it is generating, it also gives government a lot of ways to regulate, and also make sure that the tax base goes up. There are so many people who are opting for this platform. There are also small pockets of people, like very small shops, who are saying, you know what, please give us a little bit of cash, please, because they want to not get that on the record. But by and large, like wherever I have been, 80 to 90% people are open to this digital platform, right from like your small, laris to all the way. When I went to buy my bike, they had a, they were like, oh, the card is going to attract a 2.5% surcharge for you. Check will take 2 days to clear. The UPI limit is 1 lakh. If you have 2 UPI accounts, you can just buy your 2 lakh bike using UPI, right? And I ended up paying half of my bike's money with a UPI, right? I was very surprised that I would be buying a bike using UPI. So it is becoming very, very organized and a lot of value driven. Obviously, for the end consumer, this will unlock a lot of credit cycle for India also. So right from all the small banking to big banking solutions will really leverage all this data and insights. So the flow of money, like as I think Arjun was pointing out, right? Getting a loan was a tough job. Now getting a loan is an easy job, but maybe just for a home loan, car loan, maybe a student loan is still tough. But now even getting a small loan like 2,000 rupees, 5,000 rupees is going to become very easy. And it's not just going to become easy, it's going to become real time. Within the next 3 to 4 years, it's going to become real time. That's where the foundation is going to help all sorts of banks. And I think it's not just going to be a small Paytm, PhonePe, kind of a market. It's going to be very comprehensive.
Thanks for that, Urvish. So we spoke about fintech, we spoke about blockchain, healthcare, manufacturing, especially in the electronics area. We spoke about augmented intelligence, and we also kind of hinted on big data. So just wanted to check with Arun if you have anything to add here in this
Yeah,
emerging
so
technology.
I believe we are all the panelists have talked about a lot of next generation technologies which can change the paradigm of the humanity, I would say, the future of humanity. A couple of things that I would like to touch upon here is one is the whole movement towards electric vehicle and all the required infrastructure for taking the world towards it, right? It's not just manufacturing that electric vehicle, but there are a lot of research as of now going on how to improve the capacity of battery that's used for those vehicles, which can take us long distances, right? So that's one space that definitely needs more attention, because eventually if India can pay a way to be kind of achieve that goal of zero carbon emission country, right? Then nothing will be like that. That will help a lot in the addressing the concerns of climate change, right? So that's one definite space overall. Then other space that I would like to touch upon is the whole research that's going into genomics, right? With the healthcare being the focus, with the last 2 years that COVID has kind of shown us, companies like Moderna has changed the way the vaccines can be made, right? I believe genomics is going to kind of help read that human DNA and uh, kind of become more personalized in terms of diagnosis and medication, right? For example, till today, right, cancer is not curable, right? So that technologies like genomics can really help to change that thought process and can help us lead to solutions to some of those diseases which are still uncurable at this stage. Uh, then third thing I believe is in last 1.5 year, I've been hearing a lot, having a lot of discussion around supply chain problems, right?
Mm.
All of a sudden, the supply chain has become one of the world's biggest problem, because of which you see inflation everywhere, products not available, deliveries getting delayed because eventually a lot of deliveries coming from other countries to India, to US, to UK, and all of that, right? So supply chain is another problem to be solved, and I'm sure technology, we have enough data to kind of put it to use to really come up with a solution. And with all the data analytics capability and data science capabilities that India is building now, a lot of IITs have recently started courses on data science and data analytics, right? Those all can be put to use to come up with solutions for those. And these are areas where, again, going back to my earlier point of that India can become the knowledge owner, start filing patents with the right research that can come out of IITs and similar institutes, and become a power nation from there. So yeah, that those are the three things that I wanted to touch upon.
Thanks. Thanks a lot for that, Arun. There were two technologies that I was thinking about, that I want to open the floor to anyone who wants to contribute to this answer, which is 5G and augmented reality. And like Facebook is working on Oculus, and there's a lot of there was some controversy around 5G some time back. Wanted to see if somebody has anything to say about these two technologies for the next decade.
Hey, Nupur, like before we go there, I just want to add one more missing technology I think we have all not talked about is agri-tech. I think
Okay.
India is still a agriculture kind of company, right? We are still a people of many, like few billions. We still need food. So I think that's where I think, like my wife works in that space. That's why I'm more familiar with that. I can only speak up to so much, but not too much. But I think that's the space I think where also I think a lot of technology needs to come, especially in the Indian space. Then I think that space also has a role to play in basically in the environmental side. I think what Arun talked about, like carbon neutrality. I think right now, even in the US, like agriculture sector and basically things like electric, like Tesla, things like that, they're separate. But at the end of the day, like they're both contributing to the environment. So I think there's a strong need for something like, say, carbon market, carbon credit market. I think I think people can take a lead into kind of bringing India into that space. Like India still is a kind of agriculture dominant country. And if you bring that facet of kind of technology into it, I think we have a long way to go there. And then finally, one last point that Arun mentioned about kind of genomics. I think we also, if you're interested, you should read a book called Deep Medicine by Dr. Eric Topol. I think he brings really nice kind of interplay of all the different kind of technology that you can think about into how healthcare can evolve to like make this really humane. So I think if you're like if you have not kind of came across that book, please do read that book. I think he's an awesome kind of, he's a great doctor, but he also is an awesome writer, and then who has put like all the technology together into one really awesome piece of work. So with that, I will give the floor.
Can you mention the name of that book and the author in the comments so that everybody knows about it? Anybody else on 5G and augmented reality? Just
I
opening
can
the floor.
talk about augmented reality a bit, given I'm working with the startup from India. Basically, so what these people are trying to do is change the way the insurance work as of now in India, and in fact across the globe, right? What happens today if you have to kind of go for a claim, right? uh, Either you call an insurance company, they will send someone to see the condition of your let's say car, and based on the damages they will do the valuation and all of that, right? These guys are trying to do is basically insurance company don't need to send any agent. It's just at your phone click, right? Insurance company will send you a link, you just upload a small video, it will guide you how to take that video, and then evaluation will be done real time, and you'll get your code right on your phone, right? So similarly, there are other use cases this company is trying to solve, where for example in last 2 years when students were not able to go to college, right? We used to have a workshop in our first year running lathe machines and all, right? Now how will students learn that, right? So they have done that. They have given that experience on phone, right? So people can really just have that experience by touching or moving their gears right on phone, and have that experience of building a product at home, and still continue learn with their courses of workshop. Then third thing they are trying to solve is the manufacturing. There are two parts to it, right? One is, let's say you are building a machine, right, for a client, and client is let's say somewhere in Singapore or Japan, right? You don't need to travel to help them install that, right? You can guide them from phone, and it'll be like a full virtual experience where you can point out every nut and bolt, every switch and everything on app. They will get that real time on their app and use it. And all this experience is actually happening without a device like Oculus, where you have to wear something, right? This experience is all there on your phone with the 3D, and it's beyond AR, it's beyond VR. It's being called XR now, extended reality, where you merge all these experience, and you don't need a device to it. So that's what I just wanted to add. And of course 5G is all key to it eventually. But yeah, Arjun, over to you. You want to say something?
No, I was just going to talk about the genetics part, and there's a lot of, sorry, about the agri-tech part. And there's a lot of work going on in India in that area. I think what's holding it back is the fact that agricultural income is not taxed. And every politician in the country has agricultural income. The minute you put technology in there, you get a lot more data than you get today. And so there's a lot of pushback to try and get that going. Now, I mentioned politicians, but there are lots of people who get agricultural income, which is not taxed. And they actually move a lot of their other income into that, show it as agricultural income. And that's a big problem in India. So technically, I mean, I don't want to talk solutions, but they are pushing back on getting it digitized in any way, because then the data is available. And, if someone wants to go get the actual information, they'll have access to it. It's pretty much what you're doing with the digitization of payments. As he mentioned, a lot of extra people will come under the tax net. That's going to happen here too. And so I think that's one reason why agriculture is not moving as quickly as it should. But there's a lot of work going on, especially on how to save on spoilage and get products to market right, make sure that you pay the right price for the right size of potato, all that kind of stuff. There's a lot of work going on in that.
Great. Thanks for that
Sure,
input.
I
Yeah.
just wanted to touch upon one more very critical aspect of technology, and that is cybersecurity.
Hmm.
We talked about all these technologies, whether it's MLAI or 5G or AR, XR, VRs and blockchains and all of that, right? Eventually, all this data is traveling over internet, right?
Hmm.
So, or some kind of network. And security has been a concern, and with all the recent issues happened across the world, whether it's malware or something else, right? Cybersecurity has become a big area to be addressed, and I'm sure India has a right skill at this stage, and government also have a lot of focus on addressing that, because compared to the overall population of US, India is much bigger economy from that perspective. And I believe sooner India address that, it will help India move a lot more faster in terms of using technology and growing the space exponentially over the years.
Great.
Yeah, so Arun, it's a good point. My experience is, people only react after an event. No one wants to do preventive. It's like medicine also. Preventive medicine is not considered good. I mean, it's considered good, but people are reluctant to use it because it's not going to happen to me, kind of thing. But when it happens, then you end up doing curative work with a lot of people. So that's the problem with cybersecurity, not just in India, in a lot of other places. And what people are doing is trying to protect themselves from people coming into their system. But once you get into someone's system, you can sit there for years without people knowing. So, things like zero trust and all are what have to come in, and people have to adopt them and make sure that, even if someone is in the system, he can't go to another server from one server, which normally people don't protect. So, we can talk about it for hours, but yes, it's a big, big area.
Great. Yeah, thanks, Arjun. So, while we're on you, wanted to just hear your thoughts around what can NRIs bring to the table in these technologies that we spoke about, and why NRIs? Like, why would an NRI feel that this is something that I can come to contribute towards versus somebody already in India? Any thoughts around NRI contribution?
Yeah, in some areas they have a lot more experience than people have in India. They're a lot more, they've had a lot more incidents, and so their experience really helps in terms of what's going on. I think, one of the things I've got to mention is in the old days when NRIs came to India, and I was living in India at that time, you always felt that they tried to show that they were superior.
Yeah.
And that used to get you really upset when
Yes.
you were in India. That has changed, partly because they now accept you from India as being pretty smart. And they also realize that they don't really have anything. They may know a little more, they may have more degrees, but they aren't superior,
Yes.
right? And so that has made a big difference. Otherwise, earlier you would just mentally reject what they said, even if it was logical, just because they came with that attitude.
Right.
That has changed. And that's, I think, very important. But yes, they come with a lot of experience in areas that we may not have experience in India. What they don't have what they don't have by and large is understanding of the local nuances. Right. And so technically, and why to answer Sutherland's question of why isn't so much research going on in India, is because I can take a model of something that's successful in the US and adapt it to India, because I know, and that's low hanging fruit, because that business model has worked. So why can't I adapt it if I can understand local nuances in India and make it run? So for example, when I was living in India, we'd come here and the kids wanted to see A-Team and all those TV shows, which we never got in India.
Yeah.
But someone here would record them, send the CD to India, and the guy who delivered our magazines would come and give it to us for one day, and you paid him a rental.
Hmm.
So you got to see all those shows, but it was done in a different way. Right. That's the way. So it's a business model that he adapted from here, got it to India. And like Time magazine used to be expensive. So you didn't want to pay that kind of money every week. So you'd take it for one day, and this guy would invest in the Time magazine, but he'd give it to 10 people and recover 150%. Right. Simple. So, that India is very innovative that way, which is one reason why you will see a lot of startups coming out of India. And the government, I think, has realized that if India has to change, the startups are the ones that are going to make that difference. And so they're working. I mean, Invest India, Astha Grover there has got some 50,000 startups that she is cultivating right now. And yeah, it just is, it's quite amazing what's happening in that country.
Great. So if an NRI wanted to come to India and do a startup of their own, are you saying that that's a great place to start, which is the government's web portal on Startup India? Any thoughts?
Yes, you can go there and get all the advice you need to start it. The problem in India is the babu. You have to go through a process. The process is quite well defined. It's supposed to happen quickly. It doesn't always happen quickly. And there are always issues that come up. I don't know how to describe it, but people don't look at they don't look at how you want to do it. No one is there to want to help you. They are there to tell you why you can't do things. They're very much like legal departments in big companies. Their job is to tell you how you can't do things, not how you can do things. So just think of Indian bureaucracy as the legal department in a big setup.
Right. Very interesting. So I've written something controversial in my book, where I have personally said that I don't believe in the reverse brain drain, and especially that word, because it makes it sound as if NRIs are intelligent and Indians are not, and it is so far from the truth that it looks as if NRIs are coming from a pedestal, and I think we need to change that perception, which Arjun you spoke about. Is like a lot of NRIs used to, and some to the extent still think that they are superior or they know more, but we have to be realistic in what do NRIs actually bring to the table. So I wanted to see if
So just to change you said reverse brain drain. So the fact that you accept that Indians going abroad was a brain drain, you must accept that the Indians coming back from abroad is a brain gain.
Okay.
So
interesting perspective. So just again wanted to talk to Anil about so I know you've mentioned a couple of times that you're PIO and not NRI, so let's take that wording for you. What is the PIO contribution to India? What's your vision on it going forward
Well, thank you. This is a very interesting discussion with all the fantastic perspectives. Firstly, I think there need to be a mindset change amongst Indians themselves. I say this as a South African of Indian origin, and I've said this to Indian diplomats, that India is a global power today. Accept that fact. China does that. I'm sorry to bring China into the equation, but India has to project positive. When you look at the pandemic and the trust the global community had in Indian vaccines, you didn't have that with the Sinovac or Sputnik, but everyone turned to India, including Africa. I mean, our president, as head of the pandemic initiative on the African continent, contacted Prime Minister Modi and said India must help us. So India, in just getting back to sectors where you are a global leader and recognized, but you're not projecting yourself and occupying that space the way you should be in the pharmaceutical sector. And this sector is going to be with us for decades to come, because pandemics is something that we're going to come to live with, whatever pandemics may come in future. And India is well positioned to occupy the space and to lead. And you need to project that more. I'm just using that as a sector. I'm glad that the issue of agri-tech was brought in. Food security is an issue of the future. And India can be a leader in that space. And I'm glad the point was made that work is being done. But I believe India can do much more. For example, also on the issue of energy and clean energy. Prime Minister Modi launched the International Solar Alliance. But what do you want to do with that? As the lead country leading the International Solar Alliance, where do you want to take this? What impact do you want to have with this going globally? So I think, again, the point I made earlier on, whether you are PIO or NRI, that is a resource to India as India projects into the future and develops. And you must see it as an integral part of what I would call Greater India. Mm-hmm. When you speak of India, it's India and its diaspora. It's part of the Indian whole. And I think that psyche must percolate within the Indian community, the Indian government, and the global Indian community as well. And I think that can be a very positive force for good. I mean, you have fantastic resources, whether it's in communities around the world, whether you're NRI, PIOs, or whatever. How do you harness this and see it as a positive force in India's development going forward? Thank you.
Thanks, Anil, for talking about mindset change that we need to make and highlighting that. Wanted to quickly touch upon this question, and I think I would love to talk to, start with Arun. India is seen as a back office, or at least it was. Is that still the case? Do companies still look at India as a back office?
I don't think so. It used to be, yes, as I mentioned in my starting conversations, that earlier only the IT back office work used to come to India, but recently I believe that whole equation has changed, and in the entrepreneur, not in the enterprise world, right? Whatever IT companies are there, there has been a lot more ownership at India level from that perspective compared to what we do here in US, right? So to an extent, I would say things are getting at par. People in India in the enterprise world are being looked at the same level, right? I believe that is because again because a lot of people who have moved back to India who are leading teams there, right? They have changed that perspective in global management, that India can lead and own and can be held accountable within the organization, and it won't be any more offshore office, but it will be another global center like they have in any other country. So that equation has definitely changed overall from specifically talking about the IT paradigm, IT companies that are there in India. Yeah.
Got it. And so just taking this question to both Sadanand and Urvish, starting with Sadanand, do you think India is still seen as a back office?
So I have like very limited experience with kind of working with large companies. So for example, like if I take my current startup example, right? So I think this is, again brings out that point about research. So right now we have a startup. So what we do is a lot of front-end and back-end development happens in India, but all the research and the product development happens in US. So that to me itself is a sign of backwardness. Like why so? Why that is so? Probably because India has that image that only, I think someone brought this up, that we made everyone a programmer, even people coming from IITs, every engineering college is a programmer, but that should not be the case. We all, I think we also good at science. So why not? Why can't we do research? We know our kind of local, so we know like how the market works. So we can also lead the product development. Why not kind of do that? So if you see like, and exactly like you see that in a lot of the startups, like there are a lot of startups coming in and they are successful because they can develop product. They are good at product development. So thing is like, but same thing is not seen by large companies. They're still seen like a lot of large, at least companies they see India still has a kind of still has back-end and front-end development, or maybe to many companies even just all of the IT still is in India. Maybe it is moving to South America these days, but like it's the same story like that goes on. So I think we still have ways to go. Probably in the startup space, we are kind of moving on, like moving out of that. But probably I think for a lot of larger companies still needs to happen.
So it's still the case. Anything on that, Urvish, of being a back office?
Yeah, sure. So I think we are changing. So just to quote two incidents, I was talking to like Salesforce and PayPal on some of the data-oriented roles they had, and one of my questions was like, whichever. So Salesforce is building a customer data platform, which is a first for them, which is being built from scratch. Through a small acquisition Kickstarter. But the leaders there were open to acknowledge that we are driving even the US roadmap at this point of time, and we are contributing to open source to that matter. So there are some data technologies like Iceberg. So the Indian office has come up with a multi-quarter roadmap to sort of change or improve that data format a lot and contribute to open source and move the needle. Even PayPal, for that matter, they said that the whole data platform is totally run through the India center. They are the operating piece, and there might be a few architects here and there in US, but basically they are driving the roadmap. So I think then Sajanan pointed out a good boundary. Engineering wise, we are changing. Engineering wise, we are starting to lead. I think the research has to follow, and that is definitely a long pole when it comes to these kind of evolution. So, but I think as a lot of people of us are on the same page on that a lot of push is coming in different areas. Even I think I see a lot of good push in quantum computing. I see a lot of good push in blockchain. I see a lot of good push in AI. AI is already there. I think then quantum computing also deep impacts in solving bio problems, solving security problems. A lot of impact. So the seeds are being pushed even in the research area, I think. So that will change. But engineering wise, there are a lot of new product launches coming from even bigger companies in the offices. That is what I'm starting to see. So I think that's a big positive trend.
Absolutely. Thanks for that. Just wanted to add some of my experiences, just talking about culture, just shifting the question to the culture side. After working in India, what I've noticed a couple of differences in the way people treat me when I'm seeking services in the United States. One is they assume that I can't pay. So I have had a lot of people say that, are you sure you want to do this, because it's a lot in Indian rupees? And I'm like, try me. And the second thing is, I also see there's a attitude shift after, while I was an NRI, I feel like people take me less seriously from the United States, where even something as simple as a time zone conversion, I always have to do the hard work of converting time zone to speak in their time zone, even if I'm hiring their services. And a lot of people have keep their boundaries. They're like, I can't meet before 10:30 a.m. PST. And what I find that as Indians, we are so accommodating. We're like, okay, 11 p.m. meeting, I'll come for it. I don't mind. I'll stay awake. And there's a lot of people in the Indian corporate who are working late nights up to 2 in the morning to continue to be in that US time zone without saying a word. Now, why I gave you this context is because I wanted to understand what positive difference do you think an NRI can bring to the work culture in India? And I wanted to start with you, Arjun. Any thoughts around the work culture for NRIs?
So I think it's a good thing. I think our work culture is to get things done. It probably comes from the fact in the earlier days that you felt obliged that someone had given you a job.
Yes.
And so you did what was asked and, sometimes more than that to support it. But I think that's really what has helped us also in the kind of work that we do. Because while we all talk about research and working smart, it, as Einstein, I think, said, or attributed to him, it's 99% perspiration and 1% inspiration. So I think we are very good at that 99% perspiration. We definitely do that. And, just going back to the earlier point on research, I think the big problem is the government wants the IITs to do research or become research hubs. The problem is they have 40% of their staff they can't find, the faculty, because they can't find people who are good enough to be faculty. But the government is putting pressure on increasing the number of students. And so I know all the faculty at IIT Kharagpur is busy teaching. They have no time for research. So it's a problem two ways. If I get faculty who don't meet my criteria, what research am I going to do? So it's a catch-22. When I was at IIT Kharagpur, we had 2,500 students. Today you have 12,500. They're supposed to take it to 20,000. Right. The land is there, the buildings are being built, but the faculty is just not available. So doing research becomes really, really difficult. And unfortunately, the government research institutions, what was called CSIR, is not doing anything. They are the ones who were supposed to do research. So either we combine them and have the CSIR guys come and teach if they're good enough, and have some of these guys go and work in CSIR and do research. We have to look at that model a little differently, not a little, very differently, to get things done. That's the only way we'll get research culture coming into India.
That's a really interesting point of view, Arjun, about research culture coming into India. And, Aditya is back. Nikunj is back. So Nikunj, you missed the part where we're speaking about is India back office. But I wanted to combine that question as well as this question about what are the positive differences that NRIs bring to the work culture in India. Can you expand a little bit on that? Any thoughts around it?
Sure. I think overall, I would say knowledge is definitely one thing. The structural aspect of doing the things over here, a thought of a bit of work-life balance, which it's difficult over here as well, but still, I think that attitude is easy. When I came over here 16 years back, trying to schedule a release over the weekend, and the guy said, I cannot make it at this time. We need to change the release time because I have my kid's soccer game, right? It was a big surprise to me. I would have never thought about speaking up like that in a meeting, but that was a learning. And we embraced that over here eventually. So I think that part, and the bigger part, I think, is the professionalism. Simple example, I was in Tech Mahindra for a long time. I've meeting with the senior folks also. They will be on time if there's a customer call. But if it's an internal call, it's easy to join 5, 10, 15 minutes late. Or there is no courtesy to simply say, hey, I cannot make this call. Accept the invite, not make the call. So you're wasting 15 minutes of everybody over here, 10 people waiting for you. So basic courtesies, basic professionalism, I think that is something which Indian work culture still is evolving, I would say. I wouldn't say lacking, but it's still evolving in that aspect. I think those are the aspects that I would think make a difference. I also remember, I think we were a bit of a nuisance for somebody who had returned sitting next to us, a marketing manager. We were a team of very young software developers at that point of time, just out of the college, and making a rowdy environment, working very hard, but kind of creating a lot of ruckus as well, right, while working. He had returned from US after 14 years, and he was like, I can't sit next to you guys. Right? And we couldn't understand at that point of time. But I got that perspective when I came over here, and why it is so quiet to start with in the office versus the way it was, the way we were working over there. A small example, I visited, wanted to meet my team. I'd given an advance notice that I'll be there. We'll meet at 7. Got there. I was in the conference room. There was nobody. I asked the managers, where's the team? I just need 15 minutes. Want to address and thank them for the hard work. It took them 45 minutes to gather the team. And I was like, okay, how does this work, right? And then I realized I hadn't spent a lot of time. There was a big gap in between where I didn't visit India. But then I started visiting more often and got to understand this. So I think some of these aspects are, it's a matter of habit. It's a matter of leadership. I think if you, as a leader, portray that, hey, it's okay for a work-life balance. I'll be always on time. If I'm not on time, I'll tell you in advance, right? These are very basic hygiene things, right? I'm not talking about big changes, but this makes the life so easy for everybody for day-to-day task. And I think that's probably, I would say, a small contribution that NRIs can make from the learnings they had over here, apart from the knowledge and other things, which is pretty obvious. The experience, knowledge, the exposure to some of the industries, which is more extensive over here.
That's a great point. So, bringing the pure culture of the NRI community to India is great.
I just want to take a minute on that.
Yeah.
So you know how we did it in Headstrong? We used to have a box in every conference room, and anyone who was late had to put 100 rupees in there that went into some charity that we had pre-decided. So, that's the only way you'll get that culture into people in India. The other thing I noticed is that no one in India will tell you, if you say, by when I want this in a week, they'll always say yes. And then 1 hour before it's delivered to be delivered, they'll say, I need another few days. It's part of everyone feels embarrassed to tell their boss that something can't be done, or that I've got too many things and I can't prioritize this, or you tell me and something else will suffer. That seems to be a cultural thing. It's just, you learn that when you go to the US, that's the way people just don't do that in India. And so you got to get used to it and work with them accordingly.
Yeah, and
everything needs to be followed up.
To that.
Yeah.
A big plus
everything
one to
needs
that.
to be followed up.
Yeah.
I want to just, we're coming towards the last end of our segment, and just wanted to give a personal experience of one person I used to work with at Google. He was in Google New Delhi, and he would come fashionably late for all meetings. And my interpretation was that he wanted to show he's in a position of power. The same person moved to the Google headquarters in Mountain View, and he was a changed person. He was on time for all meetings. He treated everybody equally. So I think we all have to be very cognizant of the fact that there are NRIs who behave differently in India because they feel they can get away with it. And it's something that NRIs can bring to the table, which is putting their foot down and saying that this is not okay.
But that's how you drive. How you drive in the US and how you drive in India is very different.
Yes.
Same person.
I'd like to add one more observation. I think the culture of hierarchy, right? That is something I observed when I joined 20 years back into the workforce. It was difficult for us, but we said, no, address everybody by the first name, right? And our parents grew up in a different era. So it was like really odd. We got used to it. Later on, somehow I realized that everybody was calling, again, I had a gap when I visited India, like calling their managers or the team leads and all as sir. And that culture started flowing in. And my team started doing that to me. And I was super angry. Said, no, we don't want this, right? There's no sir, there's nothing like that. We all have different jobs. We all contribute in a different way. And we are just at a different phase of our careers. That's all. You will get here as well. So we don't need to do this. But I saw this big shift that happened in 5-7 years in between. And I was really shocked at this. I don't know how it is right now, but I think that needs to be changed as well.
Great.
I thought the IT industry went by first name. I thought in HCL we set that up as a culture.
It changed. That's how I started.
Yeah, no, I'm surprised because with Gurnani and all there, they all ex-HCL guys that they let that change.
Great.
But it changed. And to your point, in fact, I remember when we joined as trainees, we didn't have this habit of addressing our teachers by first name, right? They were teachers for us at that time. So there was a jar where if we said, sir, we had to put 10 rupees in there. It's same idea. And that trained us to say, okay, you can call your teachers by their first name as well. So
Right.
that was a different thing. But yeah, I think, and that's a reversal, which was very surprising for me, which was very shocking for me.
Yeah,
Actually,
it's strange because when I go to IIT Kharagpur, the director was 15 years junior and an alum. So I'm calling him sir because he's the director. He's calling me sir because I'm a senior alum. So it gets a little.
That is so funny. So Danan, you were going to say something.
yeah, so like, on this topic, it's a very interesting topic. In my experience, like I view of this as a slightly different perspective. To me, this is a really a part of culture. So in my view, what I've seen is like in US, you start with trusting people, like random people you meet, you trust them. You
Yeah.
put all your trust in them, and then they have to do something to lose the trust. In India, I think our culture is other way around. We just do not trust you. You have to build the trust. So I think that difference, that drastic difference, slowly has to kind of merge somewhere. Like I don't like the one extreme or the other extreme. I think to me, like that has been my experience. That like for example, I will tell you my personal story. Like I come for a PhD. My advisor is like, I publish a paper. He's like, yeah, publish it. I was like, I'm just an undergrad. I just graduated. How can you trust what I wrote right here? Like if I make a mistake, and probably tomorrow going to say this is all your mistake. And then he was like, yeah, then you have to talk to right people. You have to build up kind of that part. So I think talking to a lot of people in the industry, I think same thing started. I think in US, everybody just trusts you. And that's, I think from there it comes about like, giving you that freedom, that respect and all that. In India, I think it's other way around. So probably, I don't know. I just wanted to gather kind of people who are senior
No,
their
yeah.
on this.
No, so I'll give you a little example. I was in Bombay in 77, and the Bombay had a 4% octroi. And the octroi guys went on strike. They wanted more pay or whatever. So the Bombay municipality put up an honor system. Sold the truckies and whoever coming in that honor system, you pay octroi. The collections actually went up. The octroi guys had to break their strike to come back. Otherwise, it would have, as they say,
Yeah.
unki chori pakdi jati. So India, if you trust people, if you believe in people, they will reciprocate your trust. If you don't trust them, then they assume that, hey, you don't trust me in any case, so why should I reciprocate? And I find that in a relationship with people, that's exactly it. I mean, there are a few exceptions, but by and large, people will reciprocate the way you treat them. And, that's the way, at least I've seen people.
Hey, I'll just jump in quickly over here. I'm really sorry to be the odd one jumping in and out, but I have, as I said, I had to take my son, so I'm at his friend's house right now, and I need to take him back home. Otherwise,
Yep.
so
No,
that
we
these guys can
all,
eat
it's
and sleep.
past our time. It's
So
15
I'm
minutes
really
past
sorry
our
about
time.
this, but it was a really pleasure and honor to be meeting such esteemed personalities over here. And thank you so much, Nupur. A great job in coordinating. And I think I look forward to keeping in touch with all of you. Really appreciate it. And I had a lot of learnings from this.
Same here.
Thank you.
Good night,
Lovely
good
to
day.
meet you, Nicholas. Take
On
care.
that
Care,
note,
Nicholas.
we're going to have to close. So any closing remarks? I'm just opening the floor. So please jump in and say if you have something that you want to share. We would love to hear it in the last few minutes of this discussion.
Sure. I can just add few more points, Nupur here, in terms of what NRIs can bring to India in terms of helping the growth that India is looking for. I believe there is lot of experience, a lot of knowledge with I won't say NRIs, but Indians living abroad, I would say, and with all the startup culture that's building up and growing in India, one definite thing people can help is being on their board, help them as an advisor, mentor them. I know Arjun do a lot for a lot of startups. I'm doing through my company called Excelnest to a lot of these startups, not just by investing, but really uh, giving them that experience of how to build a sustainable company and how to grow it, how to find the right product market, right product fit, right? There are a lot of things that goes into building a startup. I believe with that experience and knowledge, the whole ecosystem of the success that we see of the startups as of today change, right? There will be lot more successful startups than failures which we see as of today. So that's one thing. And then I believe from the government perspective also, I believe with all the initiatives that government is running, government can use a lot of expertise that exist with this community that sits outside India, and involve them in those initiatives, take their expert advice, and from there deliver those products. I know there are a lot of great minds in India as well, people like Nandan Nilankani, who has run a lot of successful national initiatives and doing next ones. But there are a lot other people here as well who can be of real help. So at one point in time, we were discussing about building the directory of experts to kind of deliver that to Indian government so that they can reach out to people in different domains who can help build some strategic vision towards some of the initiatives that government plans to run. Similarly, the third thing is the institutes like IITs, IIMs. They should have a lot more visiting faculties from the people who are in academia here, who are people of Indian origin and in academia. They can bring in a lot of experience and a lot of education culture and how the education differs, why people come here for education compared to stay in India, right? So those all things I believe not big ones, but still can help India evolve more and much faster, and will be a long-term benefit to the Indian community.
Thanks for that,
Thank you.
Arun. Anybody else wants to make the final closing remarks, or should we move it to Avinash?
I think for a junior person, to me, it was a great forum to be a part of. A lot of seasoned folks here, and folks who really care about the greater view. So good for me to expand my mind that way.
Thanks, Urvish. All right. Okay, I think that marks the end of it. Moving it on to Avinash to close it out.
Thank you, Nupur. Thank you so much for steering this. Indeed, there's a sea of opportunity here in India, and then there's loads of knowledge, wisdom with the Indian diaspora across the globe, and the opportunity is waiting to be seized. So I think it'll be good to really involve them, get them back here to see how India can, be the superpower that it intends to be. Indeed, it was fantastic having all of you. Couldn't have asked for more on a Saturday morning. For us, we would love to stay in touch with each one of you. We do have a LinkedIn group, which is Technology Game Changers. We will share that, link with you, and we'd love to, kind of get your contributions there. It'll be wonderful to, continue to keep this dialogue on. And yeah, we will, come back to you for more, such kind of knowledge sessions that could impact both the worlds. So thank you indeed for being here this morning. Anil, Arjun, Arun, Sadanand, and Urvish. Thank you, Nupur, for driving this. I'd also want to thank Sharnita to put this together. Sharnita.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. It was nice to have a conversation.
Bye now.
Bye.
Lovely conversation. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Hey,
Fantastic, Nupur.
it was good, right?
Awesome.
There was
Awesome.
hardly any time towards the end. I totally
No, I can
forgot it is
understand.
9
I
o'clock.
told you, right? I mean, the conversation will just flow. And I
Yeah,
think brilliant, brilliant. I think we just got what we wanted. And I
great,
think it was lovely, lovely.
great, great.
I think the way you steered it also, I think